Welcome to the American Roundtable. My name is Bill Strickler.
And I'm Al Spry, right here on Tough TV. Well, we have a lot to cover. It's National Adoption Month, so we're going to have a friend of ours, and his name is Paul Batory. He's written a book right here called Chosen for Greatness. Also, some would consider him a great man, some vilified him. But a man passed this past week named Fidel Castro, former head dude of Cuba. And of course, we'll be doing a lot more about him as well on our next show. There's really too much to cover, and we want to talk about adoption. We'll also talk a little bit about this voter recount with Jill Stein of the Green Party. What's going on with that, Bill?
Well, she wants to see if she can win the election. She has 1% of the overall vote. So she's trying to make a comeback here, and is looking for a revote, looking at the voting in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin.
Well, this and a whole lot more right here on American Roundtable on Tough TV. Welcome back to the American Roundtable. Great to be here with my pal Bill. I want to talk about the Trump presidency. Now, it's of course, he's the president-elect, and but things are still working. We're still working through this choice, I guess, because now we have Jill Stein who wants a recount. What's that all about, Bill?
All I got to say, Al, I thought the nightmare was over. I figured the election was in, the nightmare was over, and we can get back to running the country. Or start running the country.
What happened?
But now we're doing looking at 3 states to see if we got hacked by maybe the Russians or voter fraud, and it just keeps going on and on. You know, thank goodness I don't take meds, because I think I would definitely need some.
Well, Bill, you know, that's debatable, of course, your need for meds. But I think what's not debatable is the fact that Donald Trump is the president of the United States. I think it's pretty obvious. What he should do, and if he could take our advice, we think that it would be best if he just stopped tweeting for a while. I think that the tweeting is not the proper form from a guy like Trump, because it's 140 characters or less. Hard to get any context in there. And some of the stuff he tweets, well, he's the president-elect now. I think he's got to kind of maybe step up the rhetoric a little bit to maybe a higher level, a little bit of a higher level. What do you think, Bill?
The less you say, the more you can say sometimes. The less he says, then he's sending out a message by not saying anything. So he should just go with the flow, roll with it, and then see how it all comes out. My opinion. What about yours, though?
The problem with Twitter is it's hard to communicate with it sometimes. Like you say, it's just these little phrases. And, you know, how do you have a debate over phrases? He came out with something the other day saying anyone who burns a flag should be sent to jail or fined, or both. Well, you know, to dispose of a flag, you have to actually do it in a way where you burn it. So which burning was he talking about? Well, you can't tell in 140 characters or less. You see what I mean? And even if he is saying don't burn the flag, well, you know, I can agree with that. But what's he talking about? I'm just saying that there's better ways to do it. Maybe Facebook posts. I don't know. 140 characters. Not enough.
Some people just talk too much, if you know what I mean now. They just talk too much.
I know, Bill, but you know I love you anyway. This is American Roundtable. I'm Al Spry.
And I'm Bill Strickler.
Yeah, it's a National Adoption Month, and of course we're going to have a great guest coming on, Paul Batory. He's a man who has adopted 3 kids. He's someone who decided to make adoption to create a family a priority, and he's got some other famous people who were adopted that we're going to talk about, including Steve Jobs and Dave Thomas. That and more on the American Roundtable right here on Tough TV and Tough TV 38. Welcome back to the American Roundtable. I'm Al Spry.
And I'm Bill Strickler.
We have a great guest in honor of National Adoption Month. That's right. This is National Adoption Month, and it's a book called Chosen for Greatness. Paul Batory is with us. Paul Batory, welcome to American Roundtable.
Hey, Paul.
Hey, thanks, Al and Bill. Great to be with you guys.
Well, why this book and why now?
Well, you know, I'm an adoptive dad, so I've my wife Julie and I have 3 boys, so it's a topic that's near and dear to my heart. Our boys are getting a little older now. They're 11, 6, and 4. And we're always looking for opportunities to try and stress to them that they may be in a unique demographic but it doesn't put them at a disadvantage being adopted. It actually, as history will tell you, it could actually put you at a great advantage. So many people succeeded in life not in spite of being adopted, but because they were. And so I thought it would be fun to sort of chronicle well-known individuals and tell their stories, and not so much what they accomplished, but why they accomplished what they did, and how their start that they received, and how it really turned the tide for them.
Well, that's a very good point. I mean, there are some famous names, and some famous names featured in your book. Who's your favorite of these that you've collected?
Yeah, they're all so unique. I kind of like the story of Nancy Reagan. I think I had never heard the connection made that, she was born Ann Robbins, that was her name. She was raised in a home in Bethesda, Maryland for the first 8 years of her life because her parents divorced, and she was sent to live with her aunt. But she was reunited with her mom and then her new stepfather in Chicago. And her stepfather was a guy named Loyal Davis, who was a strong conservative, really influenced her political thought. But the unique thing is Nancy took on his last name. So she went from Ann, Nancy was her nickname, from Robbins to Davis. And when she went out to California with her new name looking to find work as an actress, there was another Nancy Davis out there who was on the communist sympathizer list, and so she couldn't get work. And they said, you need to talk to the president of the Screen Actors Guild, who was Ronald Reagan. And so the point I make there is that had she not been adopted, had she not changed her name, I don't think she would have had a reason or an excuse to meet Ronald Reagan. And without Nancy, I don't think Ronald Reagan would have run for governor or become president of the United States. So that's just one example of connecting the dots to just show you the power of adoption in the United States alone.
Just goes to show you just never know.
You never know. I mean, there is a lot of, if you're a person of faith, you believe that there is a creator orchestrating things. If you believe in coincidence, then that would be kind of just random happenstance. I'm a person of faith. I like to think that God is directing the affairs of mankind, and adoption is one of the ways that he gets the job done.
Well, we have one person that was adopted, and I've seen it over the years, Babe Ruth. Baseball wouldn't be baseball without Babe Ruth.
Yeah, the Babe is such a fun, colorful figure. He is the epitome of excess. He struggled in that category. I think a lot of it is because he had little growing up, and so when he got a little, he made it a lot. But he credits the St. Mary's Industrial School for Boys in Baltimore with really parenting him. Brother Matthias adopted him as his own, not only taught him the difference between right and wrong, but taught him how to play baseball and introduced him to a major league scout along with Brother Gilbert there. And the Babe is just one of those great figures because he's not perfect. He's not, the poster boy of all things pure. He struggled like all of us do in imperfections, but he had such a love for kids because he understood what it meant to really come from a troubled home and appreciate someone investing in him.
Yeah.
I remember over the years I went to Hershey's Park in Pennsylvania, and Hershey actually had a boys' school for kids that were up for adoption, I guess. So you see somebody that was fortunate enough to make a lot of money, he gave back to the community and the world too.
Well, thank you. We'll have more, of course, with Paul J. Batur, written a book called Chosen for Greatness. And, of course, it's a National Adoption Month, and so we're kind of focusing our energies on adoption, which we feel is a very positive thing, changing the lives of kids. There are kids, of course, that need to be adopted. And, of course, it's a great book that you can find at Amazon and other fine retailers. I'm Al Spry, and, of course, Bill Strickland. We'll have more for you with Paul in just a moment right here on the American Roundtable. Welcome back to the American Roundtable. Paul J. Batur is our guest. He's written a book here about adoption for National Adoption Month, and it's called Chosen for Greatness. Of course, there are adoptees, great and small, people that do great things, people that live good lives. Like any normal birthed kid, right? But I like the stories that inspire. Tell us your story and how you came to be an adoptive parent.
Yeah, it would surprise me, to be honest with you. When I married my wife 15 years ago, I thought we would just have a family like I knew growing up. And when we struggled to have kids, went through fertility treatments and nothing seemed to work, and kind of, brokenhearted about it, thinking that we might have to face the prospect of not being parents. And so the chance of adopting was something that I kind of came around slowly to. A friend of mine asked me if I was interested in it, and knew a woman who was expecting a baby. I was kind of intimidated by the whole thing. It was supposed to be an open adoption, which meant we would have an ongoing rapport with the baby's birth mother, and we ultimately went for it. And I'm so glad we did. It's been a great experience. Our son is now 11, and his birth mom has just been terrific and a wonderful champion for him, and we see her several times a year. Subsequent adoptions was obviously a little bit less harrowing, but all together, dramatic and wonderful. One came through an agency, Bethany Christian Services, and then another one was a friend of a friend. So it's something I highly recommend to someone. You have to brace yourself for the ups and downs, but it really has a tremendous blessing in the end.
Yeah, I actually looked into Bethany. I was thinking about adoption myself, but one thing that kind of stifled my plans was the cost. The cost is actually quite high sometimes, in the tens of thousands of dollars and more. How do you work through that if you're not rolling in the dough, so to speak?
Yeah, it can be expensive. There are ways to defray that, of course. One of the best things Congress has done, you think what you want of Congress, and there's a lot of diverse opinion out there on it, but they have what's called, for the last decades or so, the adoption tax credit, which is literally money to you over $13,000. So that's real money off your federal taxes that you can claim and get back. So it defrays the cost quite a bit. The route through the private adoption can be really costly. If you're open to foster care to adopt, meaning children who are in the foster care system in your state, can actually cost you almost nothing. The state will, in essence, give you money to take care of children who are in the foster care program, and then when it comes to adopting them, they help with those costs as well. So that's a much more affordable way of going about it.
Sure, affordable. You have to, I guess, be flexible as far as the needs of the individual child goes. Some kids require, obviously, additional services in the foster care system, but I think you're correct. It's a lot less. Is that something you had considered at some point, the foster care, or did you do it through the?
We did, and yeah, we're still open actually with three. We're open to expanding our family if that's the way the Lord leads. But at the same time, we had the friends of friends come to us, and private adoption is wonderful in the sense that you know a lot more about the situation. You know about the health, of course, and both sides of the side of the biological parents. Depending upon what state you live in, though, an agency still has to get involved, so it can still be costly. But nowadays with the Kickstarter campaigns and the FundMe, a lot of adoptive couples have gotten creative because a lot people like to give to happy things and good things, and so people hold raffles and bake sales and even charity events where they get jerseys donated by sports teams and auction things off. There's ways to try and fund your adoption that might not come, you might not think of initially, but people want to support you.
Do you find certain states are more adoption friendly than others?
I think for sure. I'm not an expert on adoption law because I'm not an attorney. I can tell you though that certain states are, make it a little bit more challenging. The state of Colorado is very good where I'm from. They've been very cooperative, but there's different regulations for different states. One of the states, I know some states actually allow outside individuals to come in and adopt, which can actually sometimes be a negative because they can charge more to out-of-state people. But this is agency talk here, so it's a little complicated, a lot of labor. I would just encourage you to talk with an adoption attorney in your state to help guide you through the process.
Paul J. Batura written a book about adoption called Chosen for Greatness. We'll have more on the American Roundtable on Tough TV after this.
Welcome back to the American Roundtable. We are here with Paul Batura talking about November being the National Adoption Month. So what other stories, public interest stories, every story is worth telling, but what most people would know is Steve Jobs was adopted.
Yes, I mean if you have an iPhone or an Apple product, Steve Jobs is your guy. He was adopted at birth by Paul and Clara Jobs. What's interesting about him was that he was actually selected by another family, but then they changed their mind when they found out he was a boy. They wanted a girl. But Paul and Clara were perfectly positioned for him, though. They were living there in Silicon Valley. His dad was a mechanic. What's intriguing about that is his father had a workshop in the house, and the two of them worked side by side together. It's a classic example of a father influencing a son. Steve said, "I didn't really love working on cars, but I loved being with my dad." His dad taught him the importance of good design, and said, "Look, even when you're making something that no one will see, it's important that you do it well." And so Steve, absorbed that, and when he started Apple, and you open an Apple computer, you'll notice that things are quite beautiful inside and out.
Kind of like under the hood.
His father, exactly right. And he lived a couple blocks away from HP executives, so it's that Malcolm Gladwell idea that you're not just raised by your family, you're raised in many ways by the people around you, the influencers around you, and a lot of times that's what adoption does. It puts you in an environment that is so rich and so wonderful that it allows you to accomplish, bring out the best in you that may not otherwise have been brought out.
Why do you think more people don't adopt? Why do you think there's so many kids that are still waiting for adoption?
Well, I think you alluded to it earlier. I think the cost is intimidating. I mean, very few of us have piles of cash laying around, so we think it's more expensive. We don't think we can afford it, so that's one reason. I think the other reason is it's often been a very private thing. People don't talk about it. No one really is against adoption. Everybody I think sees it as a positive thing, but you just don't grow up around it. And so, what we don't know, we often don't consider. Hopefully, with the need out there, more people are open to it. Open adoption that I alluded to is making it more and more commonplace. We see families now more diverse than ever before because of international adoption and biracial families. And years ago, that would have been maybe a little taboo in certain communities, less so now. And so I think people are more open to it, and I think that's a very good thing, because I think, as you noted, there's a lot of kids and a lot of need, and the potential of every human being is what's so exciting. And when you think about, if you can invest in one thing, we think about our 401ks, we can think about kids. That's probably the best investment you could ever make.
Paul Batour with us. One more segment we'll do with him to close out the show. It's American Roundtable right here on Tough TV. Welcome back to American Roundtable. I'm Al Sprott.
I'm Bill Strickler.
Great to have wonderful Paul Batour, who wrote a great book about adoption for National Adoption Month called Chosen for Greatness, 16 uplifting and inspiring stories that show how adoption changes the world. I'd like to ask you about Nelson Mandela. I didn't realize he was adopted.
Yeah, Nelson, an amazing story, that the fact that his father died when he was 9 years old, and his biological mother was still living, but this is the culture you're in, and so they felt it so important that he have another man in his life, a father figure, that they had prearranged that when knowing his father was sick, they placed him with a tribal chief named Chief Jogintamba, who welcomed him and adopted him, and he grew up there with the new father. The new father was a leader and conducted meetings and was sort of a vaulted figure in their area. Nelson learned so much from him. He learned how to run a meeting. He learned how to deal with opposition. He learned patience. He really was cultivating those things he was going to need later in life, and he credits his adoptive father with, basically giving him the tools necessary to liberate a people and to lead, a country much later in life. It all came early in life, but the preparation was ongoing. And when he endured a 27-year imprisonment, the patience his father taught him was exhibited there. So for sure, that is a fascinating example of adoption.
Yeah, I noticed in your book it's laid out pretty well, where each section is about 10, 20 pages. So it's pretty easy reading, but it gets right to the point. And other people you have in your book, I see John Hancock, Dave Thomas, Wendy's, Art Linkletter, Gerald Ford, Newt Gingrich and Scott Hamilton, Faith Hill. So a lot of these people really don't talk about being adopted, but without the adoption, probably none of them, or very few of them, would have attained what they did.
I think that's right. I tried to include names you'd recognize to try and make the point. If you don't think your life has been touched by adoption, look around.
Thank you very much.
Have an Apple product.
It's a good way to end it. Paul Batura, thank you so much for joining us. You can find Paul Batura's book, Chosen for Greatness, from Regnery Publishing at Amazon and other fine bookstores. Thank you again, Paul, and have a great rest of your year.
You too. Thank you.
Bye, Paul.
This is American Roundtable right here on Tough TV.